Dan Illman, Matt Bernier, race number 12 at the fairgrounds on Saturday. A very important Kentucky Derby qualifying point race. It is the Grade 2 Risen Stars Stakes. We're going a mile and a 16th. $400,000 is the purse. Let's take a look at this field. Trainer Bob Baffert is expected to scratch the number 13 Kingly. That means that the one and only also eligible in the race, the 15 Gunnet, has drawn into the body of the race. Morning line favorite, Matt, is the number 14, War of Will, who has raced twice on dirt. He has blown away fields both times. He is now going to have to deal with a very difficult outside post position if Tyler Gaffalione cannot get him out of the gate and into a good forward spot without losing too much ground.
You know what, I hate to make this just as blunt as I will, but I think the only way that this horse gets beat in a race like this is if he doesn't break alertly, and if for some reason he's just 6 wide the entire way around. I suppose it is possible, but given the fact that this horse has some upward mobility, he's got a little bit of tactical speed, I just think, man, there's nobody else in this race that I'm even interested in trying to beat him with. I liked him going into the LeCompte. He's the only 3-year-old right now that I find myself really, really excited about. I just think he's way the horse to beat in here.
Connections were very excited about him before he even made his career debut. He was Grade 1 placed on turf as a second-time maiden. He ran in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf as a maiden, but his last 2 races on dirt really point him out. He is a big, good-looking son of Warfront. Very professional the way he won the LeCompte. He showed some agility on the first turn, sort of altering courses off fields to get into a nice spot on the outside, and then once he was asked for run in the stretch, he put him away. And I really like the way he drove clear the last 150 yards. Outside post, no great shakes, but this horse does have talent, and he is the horse to beat. Second choice on the morning line, Matt. Let's talk about the number 8, Owendale. Owendale is 6-1 on the morning line, and he's coming off a big win and a non-winners of one other than going 2 turns for a great trainer in Brad Cox. And I wonder if this Inner Mischief colt's coming into his own in his 3rd start of the form cycle. This is a horse that has nice tactical speed. I think he's going to settle in the second flight and keep an eye on War of Will.
Owendale, to me, is the key to the race because he could very easily be fool's gold. Depending on which figures you look at, from a buyer's standpoint, he is right there. He earned a 91. Timeform gave him a raw 95 rating. Usually we see a 20-point difference between those two. If it's a 20-point difference one way, wrong the other, boy, you're either talking about a horse that at 91 with a buyer, he fits in here beautifully. If you're really believing the 20-point difference in the 95 with Timeform, and he's a 75 buyer kind of horse, he's up the track. He's nowhere here.
Third choice on the morning line is the 6, Hogcrete Hustle, who is one of 5 horses vanquished by War of Will in the Grade 3 LeCompte. He ran quite well that day. I still think the jury's out as to whether he is truly a 2-turn horse. His best races have come sprinting. He is a half-brother to Majestic Dunhill, who will run in the General George Stakes at Laurel on Saturday, also best known as a sprinter. Hogcrete Hustle has now thrown together 3 consecutive solid buyer speed figures. I'm just still a little bit concerned about this distance.
He's a nice horse. I can't knock anything about him. He shows up and he tries each and every time. I agree with you about the distance, and even if distance is actually what he wants, and this mile and a 16th isn't going to be an issue, I hate to just make it as simple as this. I don't see anyone in the LeCompte going and beating and making up the 4-length difference, or even more, depending on where you finished, between them and War of Will. I just don't see it. Mr.
Money, the number 3, is going to attempt to become the 4th next out winner from the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and he really outran his odds that day. He was dismissed at 41-1. He finished 4th behind champion game winner. He has upped his game since Brett Calhoun has stretched him out around 2 turns, and we have a really solid formulator fact for Mr. Money. Calhoun, over the past 3 years, with 3-year-old dirt routers off a 2 to 4 month layoff, that's 53% winners, 14 of 17 on the board, and an $8.63 return on investment. Mr. Money shows a couple bullet workouts at the fairgrounds leading up to this race.
I thought he ran really well in the Breeders' Cup. Now, I've gone on record, you're right about all those next out winners, but I just don't think the Breeders' Cup Juvenile was particularly good this year. I think it's come up a little bit on the hungry side. And the big thing, though, with Mr. Money, the way that he ran, I really like the move he made rounding the far turn, where he really got into the run. The problem is he flattened out as badly as he did down the lane. I know he did break his maiden at 2 turns, 2 starts back. There's a part of me that wonders if he'll be better suited going 1 turn.
I liked Manny Wah at a little bit of a price in the LeCompte. Really couldn't find the excuse. I realize surprised he broke from the far outside in a field of 12, but Channing Hill got him in a decent enough position, pressing the pace on the turn, and I really don't think they were going very fast. It's just when War of Will came calling, Manny Wah wasn't there for Channing Hill. Here's a formulator fact for trainer Wayne Catalano over the past 5 years. 3-year-old dirt routers making their third start off a layoff, 42% winners, a $3.55 ROI. While this horse has won around 2 turns at Keeneland, like Hog Creek Hustle, I wonder if he's better at slightly shorter distances.
Yeah, I agree 100% about the distance. I think ultimately a turnback's going to be in order. Whether that comes sooner or later, we'll find out. But he's another honest horse. I think there's a number of nice horses in this race. I just don't know if any of them are quite up to the level of the top runner in here, and also how many of them actually want additional ground.
Manny Wah showed speed in the Lecomte. Timeform US believes he will be the leader in the Risen Star. Now again, you're going to want to visit timeformus.com after scratches have officially been announced, because on this pace projector, Manny Wah's pressed by Kingly, the 13, who is not coming in from California. So perhaps things are a little bit easier for Manny Wah on the front end. The 5 Henley's Joy we see in mid-pack. Henley's Joy is a very talented 3-year-old. We just don't know if he can run on dirt, and he's by Kitten's Joy out of a turfy family. I'm not sure this is his surface, but Michael Maker's no dope. This horse is talented, and he'll be a good price.
I think you're also at a point, too, with the connections where you kind of owe it to yourself, unless you think that there is absolutely no chance that the horse can stand up on dirt, that, you know what, you got a really nice turf horse, take a shot here. If it doesn't work, you always go back to the grass. But you brought up the elephant in the room for me. Kitten's Joy, sure, 13% with the lifetime runners on dirt, but at the end of the day, can you name a stakes caliber Kitten's Joy on dirt? I off the top of my head, I can't. I believe somebody on Twitter at one point months ago pointed out Chaba. You're gonna have to do a little bit better than Chaba, I think, if you're gonna be a graded stakes winner here.
Dam won on dirt, but she also won on turf. And I believe this is the family of Golden Pheasant who won the Arlington Million way back. That race obviously on the grass. Pluca Parfait, I think, can improve in his second start of the form cycle. He was no match for War of Will, but he was bet down to 4-1 that day. Somebody liked Pluca Parfait, and I don't really think he had the greatest trip of them all. This distance is going to be okay. He gets a nice inside post position this time around, and if this pace is solid, I'd expect a much improved performance and a good late run from this horse.
He's the only one I wanted to give a little bit of a look to coming out of the Lecomte outside of the winner that day, just because he stumbled pretty bad out of the gate. I didn't think it was the easiest of trips, in between horses, number of things, and he was just kind of evenly down the lane. To me, it just looked like a horse that probably would benefit from a little bit of fitness, and second start out, he'll take a step forward here. But again, really, he's another horse that, realistically, if we're calling a spade, he's going to need a big pace, really, to come with that late kick. I think he is better dropping back, making one run, as opposed to being mid-pack and trying to go on that route.
Well, I certainly agree with Timeform US that the 2 Waland is going to be last early. This horse, A, has no speed, and B, is just terrible coming out of the gate. He often spots at least a length, and I'm just not sure against a field of this caliber you can do that, especially in a big and bulky field where then everything has to work out from a pace and trip standpoint. He was a nice winner in his 2-year-old in his 2-turn debut as a 2-year-old. 2 subsequent graded stakes tries, only okay.
Yeah, and like you say, I mean, look, he is a confirmed one-run closer, and to be honest, there are other one-run closers in this race that I find much more intriguing than Royland.
Chase the Ghost, the number 4, is slowly moving forward from a buyer's standpoint, but unlike Pluca Parfait, who took money in the Lecomte off a sharp performance, Chase the Ghost was dismissed at 36-1 off a win going 2 turns at the fairgrounds. He ran okay that day. He's going to have to do a little bit better for a good trainer in Dallas Stewart.
He's the kind of horse, it wouldn't surprise me if we get out to a mile and an eighth or those kind of races, and he's grindy. He's not a visually impressive horse. He just stays distances. I think that's kind of what you saw in that Lecomte. I don't know if he was necessarily ready for that level, but to be honest, I just don't know if he's actually of that caliber. I do think, though, as opposed to some of these other horses that may not appreciate 2 turns, I think he's going to appreciate every inch of ground.
Matt, you mentioned that the key to the race is the 8 Owendale. I think it might be the 9 Country House going out for Bill Mott, 20-1 on the morning line. This horse ran second 2 starts back behind Kentucky Wildcat, and very fast time at Aqueduct. We saw Kentucky Wildcat come back and run a good second in last week's Sam F. Davis before unfortunately being vanned off of the track. Country House has already started once at 3, around 2 turns on the dirt, and he won in very visually impressive style. The problem is the race came back really slow.
Yeah, to be honest, he's the kind of horse for me. If he wins, I lose. He's just going to need to prove to me that he actually belongs here. You brought up that run 2 back against Kentucky Wildcat. It's unfortunate what happened to Kentucky Wildcat, but I've talked about the Sam F. Davis. I don't think that was a good race whatsoever. And then that most recent run for this horse when he did break his maiden. How can I seriously sit there with as badly as this horse broke? He spotted the field about 7 lengths. He's either a wonder horse or that field was awful. And guess what? I'm going to lean toward the field being awful that day. You've had 2 horses come back and run. The 3rd place finisher, a 73. The 4th, a 37. If he wins, I lose. I'll tip my cap to Bill Mott, but this is a horse I won't have any money on.
But he did overcome a lot to win that maiden. And Mott, usually very conservative with these kind of horses, shipping to the fairgrounds and running in a Derby Pret. The 10 is Limonite, who, by the way, has done very little wrong in his career, for a great trainer in Steve Asmussen. Last time out in the Grade 2 Kentucky Jockey Club, I think he got a pace. There was a big pace on in this race. This horse came from far back. He only got beat 2 lengths. The time before that, he got beat by Wyland, a horse that doesn't have a really great record coming out of the gate. He showed more tactical speed Limonite that day. But it is notable to me that the one best race came over a wet track.
Yeah, I was going to say, the wet track is definitely the thing that's most concerning to me. I'm not going to hold it against him that he took advantage of a big pace and came with that big bid, because it's what you're supposed to do if you have any ability. There was just a part of me that does wonder how much did he move up because of the wet track and everything else with the pace situation, as opposed to what are we going to get here on a fast main track, hopefully, fingers crossed. And the pace is debatable how fast it'll actually be.
Matt, you're a big fan of the number 11 Dumpf, who won the first 2 starts of his career by a combined, 16 1/4 lengths. Kentucky Jockey Club, sloppy track, didn't get the trip I think he needed. And last time out, I thought he ran quite fine in the Springboard Mile, a race that not only has produced 2 next out winners, but the winner of the Springboard Mile came back to run a bang-up second in the Smarty Jones with an 83 buyer. This horse has some upset minded thoughts for Jose Ortiz and Michael Maker. You usually don't get a big price on those connections.
I think Dumpf is good. There's a part of me that wonders, that Springboard Mile, it's come back relatively productive, but I don't love the race, to be honest. And then the Kentucky Jockey Club, he faded quite badly. He faded badly down the lane in the Springboard. I'm starting to wonder if he's really going to excel going a little bit shorter than these extended distances. We'll find out. You're right, though. These connections, Maker and Jose, you never get really double digits. Forget about 20 to 1. So if you do want to give him another chance, perhaps this would be the last time. To me, I do wonder if shorter is going to be better. 12
Frolic-More in the same boat as Owendale, isn't he? Got beat by that one last time out in the race where Beyer was very impressed. Craig Milkowski of Timeform US, not so much. Frolic-More, though, it is worth noting, it was his first race around 2 turns, and he did certainly seem to improve a little bit. He needs to prove it to me again, though.
I thought he was trying down the lane, and I suppose it's a positive thing. 2 turns for the first time, like you alluded to. But really, again, that race for me, it boils down to which figure you're going to put your faith in. And look, I have no problem coming back here on Monday when we go over the race and say the Beyer number was correct. Right now, I'm leaning toward the Timeform number, though.
Gunnett draws into the body of the race with the expected scratch of Kingley. He only cost $2.6 million as a yearling, and he has paired up Beyer tops in his 2 starts at the Fairgrounds meet. It's just such a very tough outside post position. I think this horse has some ability. I'm very curious to see what he does. If he runs a good late running 5th, he might be one that I'd like to follow down the road in races like the Louisiana Derby. It's just such a tough outside post.
I was going to say, and now you're taking on real legitimate caliber runners, not saying that most recent N1X wasn't full of them, because 2 of them, or 3 of them actually, are coming back in this spot. But I do wonder if his Beyer is sort of where that number came from,
right,
pairing up those 83 tops. And it just does make me wonder a little bit if that race is slower than maybe it looks at face value.
Top picks for the Grade 2 Risen Star Stakes. You are a huge fan of War of Will. I think he's your number 1 as of right now as it pertains to the Kentucky Derby. He's my pick in this race. He won me over last time out with the athleticism, the agility, the way he just strode away from that field in the last 150 yards. It's all about working out a trip here. I went 14, 8, 6, 12. Give me numbers.
Yeah, 14, 1, and 10 for me in here. The other thing, too, like you say, he strode out beautifully, but if you haven't seen the tape, go back. He couldn't be eased on the gallop out. This is a horse, to me, that gives off every indication that this is what he wants. He wants every bit of distance, that he's got tactical ability. He's got Mark Cassidy in his corner. Gaffaleone's aboard. Yeah, you're right. He's number 1 for me, and to be honest, he's one of the only 3-year-olds I'm really impressed with so far.
Risen Star, one of several stakes races at the Fairgrounds on Saturday, as an approximate post time of 6:02 Central. Best of luck.